Hey guys, it's me, Bren, living and growing in Zone 5B, Ohio. It's almost summer, and I hope you all are growing something that caught your eye in the seed department or at your local garden center. It doesn't matter if you grow big scale or in a small container on your patio. Watching something grow green can really turn your day around. I'm super excited because in today's share, I got to touch base with modern homesteading author Melissa Norris. She is the author of Made from Scratch Life: Simple Ways to Create a Natural Home. I had a great time chit-chatting about gardening, and Melissa was even kind enough to share a chocolate cake recipe that you can make without eggs. And let me tell you, it is super yummy because I had made this cake this past Memorial weekend, and I'm going to share it today on this podcast. So she also shared basic tips on how to eliminate processed food while saving money. You won't want to miss this packed full of Pioneer Living podcast today. Here's my interview with author Melissa Norris. Melissa, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to meet you. I went and checked your website out yesterday, so I'm like, oh yay, this could be fun.
I know you're like all into homesteading and stuff, right?
Modern homesteading, kind of all aspects of it, from the kitchen and the garden, and then all the way out into the barnyard and foraging even. So yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle.
I love that. And then so I did a quick look through your new book. It's new, right? When did
Yeah.
the Made from Scratch Life? When did that come out?
It launched officially on February 1st of this year, so it's just been out for about 3 months now.
Very cool. And boy, I love it because you just make everything so practical in that book. At least for me, it seems very practical.
Thank you. Yes, I've actually got a lot of reader feedback that it's very simplifying and just walks you through it without it being overcomplicated. Because I don't know about you, but left on my own, I could tend to overcomplicate things. So I
Yeah.
love it when somebody breaks it down for me, just like step by step.
Right. I know. Well, and then the cool thing about your book is I'm flipping through it and it's, just simple things. And I'm like, I totally forgot about that. I think we just get so complicated today and then we forget it's really not that complicated, right?
Right. And I have to confess that there are things that I will get ready to go and do, and I'm like, it's in my book, and I will literally use my own book
That's cool.
as a reference. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing at the same time. At the same time, like, well, that's a good thing, I think.
Right. So I've kind of, I have to admit, I stalked you a little bit on your website. It's great. I love your website. I love the photographs. MelissaKNorris.com. And so tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I am just a simple girl at heart. Like, I grew up, my mom, we started reading every night before bed. She would read me a chapter, and I would beg her to read more. And it was only a chapter per night on the Little House on the Prairie series.
Aw.
So I grew up like Laura Ingalls Wilder, like I wanted to be her best friend. And I always loved, the pioneer thing. Like I wanted to be in the covered wagon. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and we're very, very rural, up in the foothills of the mountains. And I still live there here. In fact, my husband and I purchased family property. And so even though I live in a different home, I've always lived on the exact same road my entire life.
That's cool. Not a lot of people can say that.
I know, right? It's kind of no, not really. And so, I'm just a mountain, a country girl. I grew up. My dad, we always raised our own beef cattle, and we always had a big vegetable garden. And my mom canned every summer, and I'd help her pick blackberries, and we'd make blackberry syrup and blackberry jam. And so I really grew up, kind of with a lot of skills that this era, or even for my age, weren't being practiced a lot. And I just totally thought that was normal until I got older and would go and stay at people's houses, or, started going out in the world and realizing that a lot of the things that we did, that wasn't everyday life for most people anymore.
Right, right. I know, and that's something, I know I live out in the country too, and I know quite a few people who they haven't left their town, much less the county, There
Yeah.
are people who still live like that, and it's quite pleasing, isn't it? I was going to ask you how long have you been gardening, but it sounds like you've been kind of small farm gardening your whole life, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely growing up, like I said, we always had a summer vegetable garden. So we didn't really ever do fall crops or kind of like your more cool weather crops. We just always planted, usually Memorial Day weekend. Actually, here is when our time is put in our summer crops. Then we just had the regular summer garden, so your beans and your squash and those kind of things. But since then, my husband and I, we have our own homestead, we call it, and we raise all of our own meat here. But we do an heirloom garden. And so we put in spring crops and then, of course, the regular summer vegetables. And then we try to do some fall crops too. But our entire garden is all heirloom seeds. So everything that we grow is heirloom. So then we're able
Wow.
to seed save. So I didn't
Hmm.
grow up. We always seed saved our own beans because we always grew beans that had came from my grandparents and their great grandparents. But that was the only heirloom seed that we did was our green beans and then our Shelly beans that we call October beans that are kind of like a pinto bean. It's probably the closest that I've seen in the store resembling those. But as far as the rest of the stuff, we just bought our seed and the hybrid seed you buy from the grocery store, and we didn't seed save it other than the bean seed. So that was kind of a whole new world when I realized that you could use heirloom seed for everything in your garden and not
Hmm.
just your beans, which I grew up with.
There's some pretty cool heirloom seeds, aren't they? Are you finding any really unusual vegetables?
I haven't. I mean, I found a lot of like I didn't know about purple potatoes, and so
Uh-huh.
what I love the purple potatoes now. And my daughter is just turned 7, and so she really likes those purple potatoes because when you make mashed potatoes, they're kind of that lavender color.
Yep.
When you put the butter on top, it glistens and almost looks sparkly. And she's a girly girl, so it's like, oh, we get sparkled, glittery lavender potatoes.
That's cool. I love that. That's fun. So I notice a lot of people with their diets lately, they're starting to eliminate more, get rid of the processed food, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
can you give us any tips on how you can eliminate processed foods while saving money?
Yes, and I love this because this is where I really first started. And
Mhm.
two is not everybody, I realize that not everybody can grow all of their own, raise all of their own meat like we do, or they don't have a ton of acreage. So they might not be able to even have a huge garden, but they can grow some things. But really, most everybody has a kitchen. So we can all really start in the kitchen and we can do some small things that make a pretty impact in the kitchen and getting rid of those processed foods. So for me, is the very first thing that I did was that we cut out all high fructose corn syrup. Which, if you're
Nice.
cooking from scratch, most of us, let's be real, we're not cooking with high fructose corn syrup, right? I
Right.
mean, we're not, but if we're buying things, and a lot of things I didn't even realize until I started really label reading that it was even in it. I mean, if you look, like on your ketchup and barbecue sauce, I mean, just a lot of your normal condiments, and it has high fructose corn syrup in it.
Mm,
You look a lot of your canned, like your different soups and stuff like that, and it has high fructose corn syrup in it. So I really started label reading, and I cut out a few things, and one of them was high fructose corn syrup. Not just from what it does to your blood sugars and reacts in your bodies, but it's very heavily processed, and it's also made from genetically modified
mhm.
crops because a lot of the corn commercially in the United States is GMO crops. And so my family and I try to stay away from genetically modified foods as much as possible. So cutting that out just killed two birds with one stone, so to speak. And then I started looking at a lot of our fats. So hydrogenated fats, soybean oil is in a lot of things, and that's also a highly genetically modified grown crop, especially commercially. So I really started cutting out those kinds of things. No
Mm.
shortening. We just use real butter in the house. The real fats. We even render down our own lard or coconut oil. If you need to be dairy free, or if you want something that's similar to shortening. I found in cooking that coconut oil. Mixed with a little bit of butter really acts like shortening in a lot of your baked good recipes.
Hmm.
So I have just started using that in place of all of the shortening. But really, it's just reading the ingredient labels. And if you don't know what it is, or can't pronounce it, or if it's got like a number sign by it, then those
Mhm.
were just automatic takeouts. Like, and the less ingredients, the better. So
Right.
those
Oh.
were the first steps that we came down with. And then some of the options I didn't necessarily see in the store, especially where we live, pretty rurally. So I just started to make a lot of the things myself to replace some of those store-bought items that I couldn't find with good ingredients or we just weren't going to eat anymore. And it's always been cheaper. I've never had anything be more expensive to make at home than it
Hmm,
has been to purchase it in the store for me personally.
very cool. Like what are some of your favorite recipes?
Oh goodness.
I know, right?
Yeah. So for sure, we are not so gluten sensitive in our house. So
Mhm.
I liked my baked goods and I like my stuff. So just putting that out there. But so so for bread, so bread is one of my favorites. We make bake bread for the week, and then oh my goodness, there's so many. And no, I love probably one of my favorites, and it is my great grandmother's chocolate cake recipe, and it doesn't use any fresh eggs in it, which is hard to believe.
Wow.
Dairy, but it is amazing. And so I used to always buy cake mixes and I would just, kind of doctor those things up and make it. And so
Right.
since then, after again, started reading all those ingredients, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to buy that. And, cake mixes you can get pretty cheap, but you can whip up a cake at home so cheap. And it doesn't have any of this, the ick factors in it. And you don't have to worry about that was the other thing I'd be like, "Oh, I wanna make a cake or I wanna make something," like, "Oh, I don't have a cake mix," and like I said, the store from us is miles upon miles away. It's not easy to just go and grab one, but I haven't bought a box cake mix in probably, oh my goodness, like
Wow.
8 years or something? I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's one of the recipes in the book, right? The made from
Yes.
scratch life.
Yeah.
I think isn't there do you put mayonnaise in it or something or
You
mayo?
do. Yeah, you put mayonnaise in it, which you can choose to make your own
Yeah.
mayonnaise or,
Mm,
from the store. Yeah, and it uses mayonnaise, and so which mayonnaise does technically have some eggs in it, so I don't like to say it's egg-free for those who are allergic
oh,
to eggs, but it's not fresh eggs, so you don't have to have, fresh
right.
eggs, when the chickens aren't laying, or that
Right.
kind of a thing. Or you want to save your eggs for something else. So yeah, it doesn't have eggs in it.
Yeah.
It uses the mayonnaise in place of it, and it is one of the best cakes. Like I have people email me in that in the bread recipe, and it's a whole wheat bread recipe, which I know a lot of people are thinking whole wheat, like because it's it's hard and it's dense and it's just not as good. But
Mm.
the whole wheat recipe in the book, I'm telling you, I have people who email me in and say I have thrown out all my other bread recipes. Like this is our go-to now. So
Mm.
probably my 2 favorites if I have to pick favorites. Those are my favorites.
I'm gonna have to give that a try. That sounds good. So I notice you have, okay, so you're growing food. You're always going to have a lot, like you had mentioned the beans. We always have beans come on. It's not like two beans are enough for one meal. You usually have a lot of beans, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you share any tips on how to preserve the food that you're growing?
Yes, there actually in the book there are tons of tips. So
Okay.
when I normally look at it, especially in the summertime, and
Hmm.
usually that's the brunt of your harvest is going on. I mean, you've got your berries ripening, and then like I said, you've got the beans, you've got tomatoes, so you've got all
Yes.
your stuff coming on at once, right?
Hmm.
And so normally what I do is I try to think about the end way that we want to eat whatever that crop might be. So for example, with the berries, I like to have some frozen because I can throw frozen berries in, pancakes, muffins, cakes, you name it, right? And then with berries, once they're frozen, they actually are great if you're making homemade jams and jellies because when something is frozen and then it thaws, it bursts those cell walls. And so if you're needing the juice out of it,
Hmm.
it actually gives you more juice and releases the juice a lot easier. So for me, if I'm super busy when all the berries are on, I just throw them in the freezer and then I'll make my jam and jelly later in the year when it's cooler or I've got more time or I don't have as much, certain crops going at the same time. And then kind of the same thing with tomatoes. If I'm super busy and I've got a lot of tomatoes coming on, or I've got like some that are ripe, but not enough to necessarily do an entire canning run, then I will just throw some of the ripe tomatoes that we're not eating in just a big bag in the freezer until I get enough to do a run with. And then I can actually, can and make the sauces and that kind of a thing with them. So I do have a chart in there on freezing because with some of your things, like with berries and tomatoes, we don't need to
Hmm.
blanch them first. We can just toss them right in the freezer. But there's some vegetables that have enzymes in them that if we don't blanch them first and kill them, the freezer just slows down the breaking down of food, but it doesn't actually like canning, stops it, but the freezer doesn't do
Right.
that. So if we don't blanch it first to kill those enzymes in certain vegetables, and
Mm.
you just put it straight in the freezer, then when you go to cook it, it's actually degrading overrated and it's not very good. So, for example, like butternut squash, one year I'm like, I'm not taking the time to blanch. I was like, I'm a busy woman, and so I just diced it and peeled it and shot
Uh-huh.
threw it in the freezer. And then when I went to cook it, I don't. It's like I could cook it for 2 hours, and it still had like kind of like this weird woody texture. And I'm like, this is so
Oh.
weird. Like I don't get it. It was like every single one, and they were, I knew that they weren't overripe when I put them in, but they were ripe enough and all that. And so I started doing research like
Oh
2 days wrong,
no.
and I'm like, oh, I guess I shouldn't have skipped that blanching step. There really had importance to it.
That would have been me. I mean, I didn't never thought of that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I didn't even think I
wow.
was gonna just save myself some time. Well,
Yeah.
instead, I did all of that work and none of it was edible. So I learned that there are
Ah,
certain things in preserving that we probably should follow the guidelines on,
yeah,
and that's one of them.
that's
So in the book, I have a complete chart on
oh
all of the
good.
vegetables that you need to blanch and for how long before freezing them. But then canning, like I love to can. Like if it's mason jars or like I'm addicted to mason jars. Let's just put it out there.
Mhm.
So I love canning. It's just such a I love that I can just do the work then and then on really busy nights because I still work outside the home. My husband works full time. And so I can come home and I can pop open some jars of home canned food and dinner can be on the table in like 10 minutes and it's still all homegrown and home cooked. So it's kind of like having the really cool pioneer version of like,
Right.
like Hamburger Helper or whatever, except it's all homegrown and home cooked. So I really love that.
I love that. So, do you primarily do the hot bath method, or do you do any pressure cooking?
Oh, I am a pressure canning girl because for safety reasons. So,
Mhm.
water bath canning for your acidic foods. So, most of your fruits,
Mhm.
tomatoes, if you add acidity in the form of lemon juice or citric acid,
Mhm.
is fine for water bath canning, or your pickles because it's been acidified by the vinegar. But for any of your meats, which we can our own meat, we smoke fish and can that, and I can chicken, and then any of your non-acidic vegetables, so your green beans and your shelled beans, any of those foods can only safely be canned via the pressure canner. So I do both, but I even use my pressure canner just to can my tomatoes and like my apple pie filling because it uses
Mhm.
less water and it heats up faster. And yeah, I'm a pressure canning girl.
That yeah, I love hearing this because I just recently got my first pressure cooker. It always just scared me. I don't know, the older models, they weren't like today. And I have just been going nuts making even meals in the pressure cooker, not just canning.
Yeah, so as long as your
Very cool.
pressure canner is
Mhm.
also a pressure cooker, which a lot of pressure canners you can pressure cook in, but if it's just
Oh.
a pressure cooker, because
Mhm.
there are some just pressure cooker models that you cannot also pressure can in, there is a lot
Oh,
of dual models. So just
okay.
make sure that whatever model you have, and it will show in your manual and when you purchase it if it can do both.
Okay.
But if you just have a straight pressure cooker,
Mhm.
then you can't can in just a straight pressure cooker. But most models are dual. Like mine is dual. I can pressure cook.
Yeah, that's good to know. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
just looking at the book now and I'm good. It's just canning. I know, right? Woo! I'm ready. I've been basing my planting on that. Do you do
Yay!
things like that too? You do you plant certain things for the recipes?
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. And yeah, in fact, yeah, I look at my garden real estate and it's like how I can get the most go out of it. And if I'm looking at a crop that I'm only gonna really be able to eat fresh, like lettuce, for example, I've never found a way that I really want to preserve lettuce. That's like one of the unpreservable things, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so we eat it fresh, and I do plant lettuce, but I don't plant, like I don't let it take up a huge part of the real estate in the garden because I know that I'm not going to be able to preserve it. So I'd rather put something in its place that we can eat fresh and I can preserve to eat, year round until that it's time to plant that crop again.
Right. Very cool. So, kind of a little off subject, a little. I noticed on your website you have a lot of other items that you make from scratch, like cleaning products and beauty care, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a whole like it's a whole lifestyle.
Ah,
No,
I love that. No, that's really cool because you pretty much eliminate the chemicals that can be
right,
bad for you.
because yeah, and it was when I first started looking, of course, starting in the kitchen because we know that what we eat totally, affects us, obviously, on many different fields, from our, our weight to, how we feel and blood sugar, all that kind of stuff. But our skin is really our biggest organ, and so what you're touching, what you're putting on your skin, be it in the form of, lotion and different beauty products, but also what you're cleaning with, because most of us aren't always wearing gloves, or we clean something and then we're going to take those gloves off and we're going to be touching it later, countertops, or if you're going barefoot on your floor and that kind of a
Right.
thing. And so
Wow.
I started looking around at the things that I was spraying to clean with and all the warnings on them, and I didn't even know what half of the stuff in it was. And I thought, I don't like this.
Right.
Yeah. So I started looking and making a lot of my homemade cleaners, and now like everything, I clean the bathroom, and almost anything in your home can be cleaned with either a combination of, or either or, of baking soda and vinegar. Like seriously, it takes care of everything.
Really?
Yeah. So I like a lot of different cleaners. Like I do a all-purpose cleaner for both windows and countertops, and even like mopping the floor,
Mhm.
with vinegar. And you can scent it, so you can infuse vinegar. You can do that to make salad dressings and different foods, but you can do it also to make your cleaning products. So you can infuse it with citrus. So you can
Hmm.
decide, if you want orange peelings, lime peelings, whatever, lemon peelings. And you can also scent it. A lot of people will scent it with some herbs as well for and you can do different ones. Like the nice thing about doing with like a citrus cleaner, which that's in the book as well,
Mhm.
is citrus kind of boosts your cleaning power, right? Because citrus really helps cut through grease. So
Okay.
it kind of boosts the effectiveness of the vinegar, and it makes it smell better. I don't mind the smell of vinegar, and it does evaporate. So for anybody who's like, I don't want my house smelling like vinegar, as soon as it dries, it evaporates and doesn't smell like vinegar anymore, I promise.
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
kind of just fade out. That is, and hey, you know what? It sure beats, like you're saying, I never thought of the thing. You're stepping on this barefoot. What is it? You know?
Right. Yeah. And like we have like in my kitchen, I just have like vinyl linoleum flooring,
Mhm.
and it's got like kind of like, it's like it's not perfectly smooth. It's got like little divots in it. Most linoleum does. And over time, if you're using soap, like soap scum starts to kind of build up in the
Yeah.
lower areas.
Mhm.
And the cool thing with about vinegar is you don't ever have that problem.
You're right. That's very cool. Well, gosh, I didn't mean to change gears on you there, but that's good stuff. But how exciting! So I know you're a busy girl. You got to get back to work there, and I'm just curious, where can people find more of your suggestions?
Yeah, well, definitely the blog, which is at melissanorris.com, and then the Pioneering Today podcast with Melissa K. Norris, which is also on the website or on iTunes. And then if for the book, for the Made from Scratch Life, you can
Yeah.
go to madefromscratchlife.com, and I actually have over $20 worth of free bonuses, including workbooks and printable cheat sheets and all different kinds of things, and an Amish canning cookbook sampler for free when you
Wow.
purchase the book. So free bonuses. So definitely check out those free bonuses, and that's all the cool fun stuff.
Wow, that is pretty cool. And I followed you on Twitter. You're on Twitter.
Yeah, yes, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are my main happenings, other than the blog and the podcast. Yeah.
How exciting. So thank you so much for sharing with me today. I'm excited. I have your book and I'm ready for the growing season and canning. And thank you so much, Melissa.
Oh, thank you. I had so much fun. Thank you for having me on.
Wow, that was great. I think I'm going to go mop my floors with that great cleaning recipe Melissa shared today. So be sure to stop by her website where you can find the links and the recipes that we mentioned today, plus a whole lot more. There's also links to all her social media, and you just don't want to miss it. Her website is Melissa, Melissa Norris.com. And you can find her on Twitter also under Melissa K. Norris. You can find this presentation and more on my website, brenhaas.com. Click on the hashtag Garden Chat Network button at the top of the page. It's a place where you can connect with others so we can all learn to grow better together. Okay, guys, let's get out there and enjoy the season and start growing together. I hope to see you out in the garden.